taking it to the next session, I'm very excited to bring up Gregor Hochmuth, who has worked at many different companies, from Microsoft to Google to early at Instagram, and he's going to share with us his vision about art with data and how he likes to visually communicate and inspire humanity. Take it away, Greg.
Thanks so much. All right. Does the sound work? Perfect. Great. Great. Before I start, I want to ask you a question, which is, what is your favorite piece of art? What's the first one that comes to mind? Say what? That's one. Yes. We actually, about a year and a half ago, a few friends and I took a road trip through the South and asked that same question to many people along the way. And we didn't quite know what to expect. After all, people don't talk much about their favorite pieces of art, especially not with strangers. And much to our surprise, let me see if this works. Much to our surprise, the same piece of art kept mentioning again and again and again. And when I came back and I asked more friends, there was the same piece of art again and again. And I think, speaking of visual technology, we have some video issues here. But as you might guess, if this picture had revealed itself, this is Starry Night. This was the picture, oops. This was the picture that everyone mentioned, so many people, again and again. And maybe that was the picture you just thought of, or that came to your mind. But what is it about that painting? What is it that captures so many people's imagination when they think of their favorite piece of art? For me, the answer lies in what draws us to art. And I find in my own personal experience, great art, what's going on? I'm not even pressing anything. Great art brings me something that is very rare in life otherwise, which is deep, meaningful emotional experiences. And when that happens, it's an instantaneous combination of thought and feeling for me. Our cerebral need for answers and our primordial need for harmony and beauty. Now, some of us are more drawn to one side than the other. Some of us are more cerebral and look for craft and technique in the art. This is the one I wanted to show. They're more cerebral. They look for craft and technique in the art that they enjoy. Others look for something more intangible, more thought, more feeling, something more cerebral, something more intangible. And I think Starry Night sits right in the middle of those two poles, bringing together thought and feeling for so many people in a universal way. I started my career far on one side of that spectrum, on the land of thought and numbers. I studied computer science, I worked at Google, and then I joined Instagram early as one of the first engineers. And in that land of thought and numbers, your primary measure is utility. What problem is your product solving, and for how many people? Of course, that's not the only goal. You expand on it by making your product easy to use, by making it beautiful. But at the end of the day, without utility, there really is no product. And I enjoyed that work immensely. The problems I solved, the solutions I got to work on were all very inspiring. And impact wasn't just some shallow, fluffy word. It really meant something in my daily work. But after many years of working in tech, I became interested in working on another kind of impact, the kind of impact or value that Starry Night plays in our lives. And what was that? Instead of just working on thought and solving problems, I wanted to explore emotions. I wanted to combine thought and feeling and make art. So I quit Instagram and moved to New York, and I've been working here as an artist since. And in my work, I often use data as the raw material. You could say that's still the thought and numbers part of my brain. But I add layers of emotion and visceral experience to that. The project I want to show you today, and maybe we can turn up the sound next. The project I want to show you today is a collaboration I did last year with a friend and collaborator of mine called Network Effect. And the emotional question we asked with Network Effect was, what does it feel like to use the internet? What does it feel like to browse online, constantly clicking and looking at humanity through this strange window that we have? Our raw material, our data, was 10,000 video clips from YouTube. We made a list of 100 different behaviors, things we all do.
Get all my printing done. Log.
Let me turn that down.
Gotta spend the rest of my weekend
100 different behaviors, things we all do. Eating, primping, sleeping, walking, folding, catching, carrying.
Only half that time is actually primping.
A teenager on my
And we
plane
gathered
was filming
100
herself
clips
and
each
taking selfies.
of people doing
It was
those behaviors
fascinating
for
and
10,000 total.
disconcerting.
He thinks I'm staring because I'm interested in this lecture, but I'm just trying to figure out if he's wearing a TMN t-shirt.
Gives out my name. Gives out my life. Where I'm falling because I can't fall because they have something
We really wanted to ask, what does this feel like? What does it remind you of? Is this what it's like to be on the internet and constantly look and click and browse and be overwhelmed and frenzied? Can't stop watching, and yet what's really there? And most importantly, how do you feel at the end when it's all over, if it's ever over?
Yeah, I'm driving because I'm not about to stay in SD.
Because I can't delete my risque
I
photos.
Can you turn up the volume a little bit
person
more?
that sit behind me when I'm driving because of the amount of space
Reading
I
10,000
take.
sentences being spoken. There's lots of other data layers on the bottom. Many things to explore. We only give you a limited amount of time on the site.
Where?
There's way too much for you to see in that amount of time. The videos alone would take you 2.5 hours,
I honestly hope this
and we don't let you back in for another day
because I bought a
if you ever want to watch it again.
But I always forget to close my hand around.
All this data, all this media, all this look at humanity, how does it make you feel? That was our question.
While I'm talking, because I
We recently put this up as an installation at the Tribeca Film Festival, where you could step into this experience physically. And this wasn't the product, this wasn't solving a problem for anyone, but people stepped in and spent 5, 10, 15 minutes completely fixated looking at what you just saw. And this is what all comes back to visual technology for me. Visual technology is one magical intersection where we can not just solve a problem for people, not just create something useful, but also something beautiful and emotional, and bring together thought and feeling at the same time, instantly. Because after all, we, the people in this room, don't work on technology for spreadsheets. We're bringing together people, we're connecting people to colorful images, to moving images. We're connecting them to the world they see and often touch. And all the technologies you hear about at the summit, they all can solve really important problems. And I want to ask myself, what can those technologies do when they're not solving a problem? And I want to encourage you to think about that same question, to explore the playful side of those technologies, the useless side, but wonderful side. And when you find something, it may not be a product, but it'll be worth making just as much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gregor.